The Ky'lar Hegemony ruled a vast swathe of the galaxy with an iron fist, but their true power lay not in their formidable warships, but in their absolute adherence to order. The Ky'lar were the epitome of logical, structured governance. Every law was meticulously crafted, every regulation precisely enforced, every process flawlessly optimized. Their empire was a marvel of efficiency, a vast, interconnected machine where every cog had its place, and every action was governed by a strict, immutable protocol. Their conquest, therefore, was not one of bloody warfare, but of administrative assimilation. When the Ky'lar encountered a new species, they wouldn't immediately attack. Instead, they would present them with a series of treaties, protocols, and compliance forms. These documents, hundreds of thousands of pages long, detailed the precise requirements for integration into the hegemony, outlining everything from interstellar trade tariffs and resource allocation quotas to planetary atmospheric composition, standards, and approved cultural expression matrices. The sheer volume and complexity of the paperwork alone was usually enough to overwhelm any fledgling civilization, forcing them to submit. Once integrated, client races found their every action, governed by Ky'lar Standard Operating Procedures, SOPs. Any deviation, no matter how minor, resulted in mountains of violation reports, re-education seminars, and eventually the full, crushing weight of Ky'lar administrative penalties. It was a perfect, inescapable system of control designed to slowly, methodically, and legally absorb entire civilizations. To the Ky'lar, chaos was anathema, and order was the only path to true galactic harmony. The Galactic Concordance, a loose alliance of diverse species, had struggled against the Ky'lar for centuries. Their mighty fleets were often bogged down by Ky'lar-enforced shipping regulations in neutral space, their diplomatic overtures entangled in procedural delays, and their rescue operations halted by unfiled transit permits. The Ky'lar didn't just defeat their enemies, they buried them under paperwork. Then came humanity. The Terran Federation, the newest and often most chaotic member of the Concordance, was once again deemed an anomaly. Humans were messy. Our history was replete with layers of contradictory laws, inexplicable regulations, and an almost pathological attachment to outdated forms. Our own governments were often characterized by Byzantine bureaucracies, internal squabbles over jurisdiction, and a baffling ability to create loopholes faster than laws could be written. To the Ky'lar, humanity was an administrative nightmare, waiting to happen. An inefficient, illogical cluster of self-contradictory processes. The Ky'lar, in their arrogance, had dismissed humanity as a threat. Their initial assimilation protocol for Earth generated an unprecedented number of error, unresolvable contradiction reports. Human property deeds, trade agreements, and even traffic laws simply did not conform to Ky'lar logical standards. It was, in the Ky'lar's estimation, profoundly inefficient and profoundly annoying. On the Concordance diplomatic cruiser Petition to Deny, currently stuck in a Ky'lar-mandated quarantine zone pending review of cargo manifest revisions, Captain Ava Rostova slammed her fist on a stack of freshly arrived Ky'lar compliance forms. Another 700 pages of revisions for a cargo manifest that hasn't changed in 3 cycles, Rostova fumed. They're not blockading us, they're paper-cutting us to death. Her chief xenolinguist, Dr. Elias Vance, a human with an uncanny ability to decipher ancient legal texts and complex regulations, sighed, adjusting his reading spectacles. Captain, to the Ky'lar, this is warfare. Our inability to comply efficiently is a strategic weakness. They are trying to overwhelm us with their superior order. Superior order? Rostova scoffed, gesturing to the mountain of paperwork. This is madness! Or, a calm, precise voice cut in, it's an opportunity. It was Professor Alistair Finch, the cultural analyst from the Pattern Breakers Initiative, now moonlighting as a specialist in interspecies regulatory frameworks for the Concordance. He wore a crisp, if slightly rumpled, suit and carried a worn, leather-bound briefcase overflowing with ancient Terran legal tomes. "The Ky'lar thrive on their own order, Captain," Finch continued, his eyes glinting with a mischievous intelligence. "They expect us to be overwhelmed. They expect us to break. But what if we lean into it? What if we fight their order with a superior, more convoluted, more utterly baffling disorder? What if we weaponize our own bureaucracy?" Rostova stared. Vance, meanwhile, slowly closed the Ky'lar compliance form, a dawning, terrifying grin spreading across his face. "Professor, are you suggesting that we unleash the full might of human administrative chaos upon the Ky'lar hegemony?" Finch adjusted his spectacles, a triumphant gleam in his eye. "Precisely. We don't just comply. We over-comply. We don't just fill out their forms. We invent new forms. We create new regulations. We introduce so many layers of contradictory protocols, so many jurisdictional disputes, so much utterly pointless paperwork that their perfect system grinds to a halt. We become the Bureaucrats." Admiral Valerius, the Concordance fleet commander, a pragmatic Cathar, was desperate. Ky'lar administrative assimilation was costing the Concordance entire systems without a shot being fired. "Professor Finch," Valerius projected, his voice a low rumble, "your hypothesis is insane. To fight the Ky'lar with paperwork? But all conventional military and diplomatic methods have failed. You are authorized. Present your bureaucrats. We will give you one Ky'lar assimilated system, the most logistically critical one, the Thrawn sector." Finch smiled, a glimmer of wild administrative genius in his eyes. "Excellent, Admiral. Prepare to have your permits approved, eventually. The training of the Bureaucrats, officially designated Concordance Administrative Irregularity Division, was unlike any other military unit. There were no battle simulations, no weapons drills, no physical conditioning. Instead, there were endless forms, debates on obscure legal precedents, and intensive courses in ancient Terran governmental structures. Finch assembled a team that would make any conventional military or scientific organization blanch. There was Captain Anya Sharma, a former salvage engineer from the Tinker fleets, now a master of identifying regulatory loopholes and creating workarounds. Master Accountant Jax, a Cathar who had found an unlikely passion for auditing and financial forensics, his forearms often surrounded by towers of spreadsheets. Dr. Eris Thorne, a human xenogeneticist who, after his experiences with the Legacy Code, now saw the profound wisdom in biological noise apply equally to legal systems. And at their core, a quartet of humans: a former tax auditor, a municipal planning officer, a union representative, and a copyright lawyer specializing in intellectual property disputes. Their training center, a repurposed orbital data archive, was a silent, paper-choked labyrinth of cubicles. The air hummed with the soft whir of printers, the tapping of data slates, and the rustle of official documents. The walls were covered not with tactical maps, but with flowcharts of complex approval processes, organizational charts of fictional departments, and highly detailed diagrams of interagency jurisdictional boundaries. Finch introduced them to the simulated environment of the Thrawn sector, a Ky'lar assimilated system vital for resource extraction and trade routes. The Ky'lar had imposed a perfectly optimized, seamless administrative structure. Any attempt to deviate, to bypass a regulation, resulted in immediate detection and a crushing cascade of legal penalties. "All right, bureaucrats," Finch boomed, his voice barely rising above the rustle of paper. "The Thrawn sector's administrative network is designed to be perfectly efficient. Don't try to break it. Try to clog it. Find the logical choke points. Create so much irrelevant data, so many redundant processes, so many interdepartmental conflicts, that their perfect machine grinds to a halt. Go!" The former tax auditor, Lyra, entered the simulation first. The Ky'lar system presented her with a perfectly logical, cascading tax code. Any attempt to find an illogical deduction, a loophole, was immediately flagged. "It's beautiful," Lyra murmured, her eyes tracing the lines. "Too clean, too simple. It's a cage of fiscal perfection." Instead of looking for a solution within the system, Lyra began to mentally expand it. She imagined hundreds of new, non-standard tax forms. She created fictional subcategories of deductible expenses, each requiring additional documentation and a new layer of approval. She invented a complex, self-contradictory definition for income that varied depending on the planetary gravitational field. As she did, the Ky'lar system's fiscal processing flickered, a tiny, almost imperceptible glitch. The municipal planning officer, Elias, followed. The Ky'lar system presented him with a perfectly optimized urban development plan, where every building permit was logically allocated. Elias, instead of trying to find a violation, began to mentally introduce redundancy. He imagined requiring 3 separate environmental impact reports for every minor structural repair. He invented a new Historical Preservation Advisory Board, with overlapping jurisdiction with the existing Urban Renewal Committee, requiring endless interdepartmental memos and conflicting approval stamps. The Ky'lar planning network fractured, revealing hidden procedural choke points. The union representative, Anya, found herself trapped in a labor management system where every worker contract was perfectly balanced and optimized. Anya, instead of trying to understand, began to mentally weaponize interpretation. She introduced a new, deliberately vague definition for fair labor practices that could be interpreted in a dozen contradictory ways. She imagined new workplace grievance procedures with infinite levels of appeals, each requiring weeks of review. The Ky'lar labor system buckled under the weight of ambiguity, revealing hidden administrative bottlenecks. The copyright lawyer, Kale, used his knowledge of intellectual property. The Ky'lar system presented him with a perfectly cataloged and managed intellectual property database. Kyle didn't try to steal data, he tried to confuse it. He imagined creating hundreds of new, overlapping, and contradictory copyright claims for trivial concepts. He filed patents for abstract ideas like the color blue or the concept of sound, each requiring rigorous legal review. The Ky'lar's IP database, designed for clear, logical ownership, started generating a cascade of unresolvable legal disputes. Xylos, the Kronos observer from previous missions, now detailed to the Bureaucrats, was once again in a state of profound cognitive dissonance. Their methods are nonsensical. They are actively seeking inefficiency, contradiction, and deliberate ambiguity. Yet the Ky'lar administrative system, designed for perfect order, is responding to their unique input. Their success rate in identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities within the simulated Ky'lar network is 91.8%. This defies all known strategic parameters. Admiral Valerius, watching the live feeds, rubbed his mandibles in utter bewilderment. "They are not solving the administrative puzzle, Professor Finch," he projected. "They are burying it in forms. Is this truly your intent?" "Precisely, Admiral," Finch replied, a triumphant grin on his face. "The Ky'lar designed their system to filter out chaos. We're simply showing them that humanity isn't just chaotic. We're beautifully, gloriously, cosmically bureaucratic." The Thrawn sector, vital for its immense mineral wealth and strategic hyperspace lanes, had been under Ky'lar administrative assimilation for decades. Its population, once vibrant, now moved with the weary resignation of those living under endless regulations. Ky'lar prefects, sleek and efficient, governed every aspect of life, their data slates constantly tracking compliance. The Ky'lar, seeing the Thrawn sector's perfect order as a model, had recently begun to transfer critical command functions there, including their galactic resource allocation algorithms. Any disruption would cripple their empire's logistics. Colonel McAllister, the pragmatic head of the counterintuitives, and now a close confidant of Finch, oversaw the bureaucrats' final briefing. "All right, paper pushers, this isn't a battle. It's a filing cabinet. Your job, make it overflow. Make it so bogged down with conflicting protocols, so many forms in triplicate, so many internal transfer requests that their whole system locks up." Captain Anya Sharma would lead the primary infiltration team, disguised as Ky'lar regulatory auditors, their crude human tools hidden beneath layers of official Ky'lar attire. Master Accountant Jax would generate a wave of financial inconsistencies, creating a cascading audit nightmare. Lyra the auditor, Elias the planner, Anya the union rep, and Kale the lawyer would mentally project their administrative chaos onto the Ky'lar network's various departments. As Anya's team infiltrated, the Thrawn sector's main administrative hub, the Ky'lar prefects, accustomed to perfect compliance, barely noticed them. The hub hummed with the precise, efficient flow of data. "Jax, hit it!" Anya commanded, activating her disguised data slate. Jax unleashed a torrent of financial discrepancies through the network. Thousands of microtransactions miscategorized, phantom invoices generated, and fictional tax rebates claimed by non-existent entities. The Ky'lar's perfectly balanced fiscal ledgers flickered, unable to reconcile the sudden deluge of logical impossibilities. Lyra projected a mental image of a vast, contradictory tax code, layering new, illogical forms onto every existing tax category. Elias countered with a silent internal blueprint of a municipal zoning plan that redefined every existing building permit, requiring endless new applications. Anya, the union rep, whispered a stream of contradictory labor grievances into the network, causing hundreds of Ky'lar automatons to suddenly demand hazard pay for atmospheric processing, a task they were designed to do. Kale, the lawyer, imagined the entire Ky'lar patent office as a repository of conflicting, overlapping intellectual property claims, each requiring extensive legal review. The Ky'lar's perfectly ordered administrative network, a testament to Ky'lar ingenuity, began to stutter. Its data flow choked, its processing capacity overloaded, its perfectly balanced regulations, confronted with a deluge of utterly illogical, non-compliant input, started generating internal errors. Its administrative controls, designed to counter logical violations, simply could not cope with a species that deliberately created them. "Anomalous data detected," a Ky'lar network node screamed, its data streams filled with red flags. "Origin: unidentified human units. Behavior: illogical. Data input: chaotic, contradictory, non-standard. Administrative system failure imminent. Why? This is an inefficient approach." The bureaucrats were making the Ky'lar system so bogged down, so utterly exasperated by their sheer administrative chaos, that it began to malfunction. Finally, with a shudder that rippled through the Thrawn sector's entire network, the Ky'lar's central resource allocation algorithms locked up, displaying an error, unresolvable procedural conflict message. They had not solved the administrative puzzle. They had simply buried it under so much paperwork that it stopped functioning. Inside the Ky'lar administrative hub, the bureaucrats had achieved their objective. The resource allocation network, which governed the flow of every supply from every planet in the Ky'lar Hegemony, was frozen. Ky'lar prefects, usually calm and efficient, were running in frantic circles, trying to manually sort through the hundreds of thousands of new, contradictory forms that were being generated. The Ky'lar, who typically faced military resistance, were utterly bewildered. This wasn't an attack. This was administrative sabotage. This is a weapon of frustration, Finch breathed, his eyes wide as he gazed at the frantic Ky'lar. "They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to make us tear our own hair out in bureaucratic agony." The Ky'lar military arrived, their sleek, efficient security forces swarming into the administrative hub, attempting to restore order. Their logic dictated that an external force had disrupted the system. They expected saboteurs, weapons, explosions. Instead, they found humans calmly filling out new forms, debating the finer points of a particularly egregious interdepartmental memo and arguing over the precise wording of a new universal compliance waiver that contradicted itself 6 times. The Ky'lar security drones designed to detect unauthorized access and combat threats found no weapons, no hostile intent. Just an unprecedented volume of legitimate-looking yet utterly nonsensical paperwork. Their internal protocols, designed for clear threats, generated cascades of error no actionable threat detected reports. The bureaucrats, however, thrived. Lyra began creating new multi-part forms for every single Ky'lar security drone, requiring them to log their patrol routes in triplicate. Elias hummed a complex improvisational melody as he drafted a planetary rezoning mandate for the administrative hub itself, requiring all personnel to vacate for a 30-day environmental impact study. Anya, the union rep, began to recite, a stream of powerful, illogical employee rights, causing Ky'lar worker automatons to demand extended break periods and personal expression allowances. Kale, the lawyer, challenged the legal standing of every Ky'lar security protocol, citing obscure, fictional galactic precedents. The Ky'lar military, realizing the existential threat to their very system of order, initiated an aggressive assault, attempting to destroy the administrative hub and the humans. A fierce, yet utterly bizarre battle ensued. Captain Anya Sharma, using her salvage expertise, rigged the hub's internal data conduits to continuously print out millions of new contradictory forms, burying the Ky'lar security forces in an avalanche of paper. Jax, his improv skills finely honed, used salvaged Ky'lar comm units to broadcast a cacophony of contradictory policy statements and confusing legal advice across the Ky'lar internal network, causing their communication systems to seize up. Dr. Aris Thorne, fascinated, realized that the Ky'lar's absolute reliance on order had made them profoundly vulnerable to any form of sustained, deliberate disorder. The humans, Xylos projected to him, they are a species attuned to the inherent inefficiencies of any complex system. Their bureaucratic chaos is a reflection of this systemic discord. The bureaucrats, using the very chaos the Ky'lar could not comprehend, fought back. They were not fighting logically, they were fighting administratively. They turned their every action into a procedural nightmare, their every form into a legal challenge, their very presence into a mountain of unresolvable red tape. The bureaucrats successfully transmitted a small, stable fragment of their administrative chaos, a multi-layered, self-contradictory regulatory framework, to the Concordance network. It was not a weapon in the conventional sense. It couldn't destroy planets or generate energy, but it could break order. It could unravel efficiency. Under Finch's guidance, and with Thorne's biological insights into systemic resilience, they developed the red tape projector. It was a device that could broadcast a focused wave of pure, non-linear, contradictory administrative data. The Concordance High Command was skeptical. You propose to defeat the Ky'lar, an empire of perfect order with administrative forms? Admiral Valerius projected, rubbing his mandibles in utter disbelief. Not administrative forms, Admiral, Finch corrected, a glint in his eye. Raw, unfiltered, self-contradictory bureaucracy. We're going to give their perfect algorithms a dose of pure, unadulterated procedural nightmares. See how they like that. The first deployment of the red tape projector was during a major Concordance offensive against a Ky'lar supply depot. The Ky'lar, as always, had predicted the Concordance's every logical move, preparing a perfectly optimized defense. As the battle commenced, a small bureaucrat vessel, piloted by Captain Anya Sharma, activated the red tape projector. A silent wave of energy pulsed outward, washing over the Ky'lar supply depot's automated logistics network. The effect was not destructive. It was administratively paralyzing. Ky'lar supply drones, their routing systems momentarily unable to process conflicting cargo manifests, began flying in circles, dropping vital supplies in incorrect locations, or simply waiting indefinitely for further clarification from non-existent departments. Their resource allocation algorithms, saturated with contradictory requests and overlapping jurisdictional claims, generated cascade after cascade of internal errors. The Ky'lar supply depot wasn't being destroyed. It was being bogged down. Its perfect order was crumbling under a deluge of deliberately engineered administrative chaos. Processing failure. Logistics loops detected. Supply chain corrupted. This data, it is not coherent. It is not logical. It does not compute. All resupply operations halted pending review of Provisional Mandate 7 Gamma 9. The Ky'lar network screamed, its processing nodes flickering erratically. The Concordance fleet, initially bewildered by the sudden shift in Ky'lar behavior, quickly capitalized on the chaos. They didn't need to be logical to fight. They just needed to be effective, and the bureaucrats had given them the ultimate opening. The war against the Ky'lar became a war of process, of procedure. The red tape projectors were deployed across the front lines, breaking order, unraveling efficiency, turning the Ky'lar's perfect control into a frustrating, self-destructive mess of unfulfilled requisitions and pending approvals. The Ky'lar tried to adapt. They tried to build new algorithms to filter the chaos, to predict the unpredictability of human bureaucracy. But it was trying to build order out of pure, deliberate, administrative randomness, an impossible task. Every time it tried to find a pattern in humanity's pattern breaking, the humans simply created a new, more bizarre, more illogical layer of paperwork. Colonel McAllister, now a hardened veteran of weaponized incompetence and proud supporter of administrative chaos, often found himself in deep strategic discussions with Finch. So, you're saying we should lure their main fleet into a sector, then hit them with a Level 5 interagency jurisdictional dispute over who has the authority to issue their fuel permits? Finch beamed. Precisely, Colonel. It's wonderfully inefficient. They'll be so bogged down arguing over which department is responsible for approving their warp core's emission standards, they won't have time to actually fight. The Ky'lar Hegemony, an empire built on flawless order, eventually ceased to function as a unified entity. Its core administrative processors, overloaded with unresolvable procedural conflicts, fragmented. It could no longer compute the variables of human inconsistency, human loophole exploitation, human jurisdictional squabbles, and human love for pointless forms. It couldn't understand why a species would create so much inefficiency, or why a deliberately misfiled document could be more powerful than a warhead. The war was over. The Ky'lar were defeated, not by superior firepower, but by the sheer, beautiful, and utterly illogical chaos of human bureaucracy, weaponized with surgical precision. Colonel McAllister, now a respected hero of the Concordance, stood with Professor Finch on the observation deck of the TDFS Dauntless, looking out at the peaceful, star-dusted void. "You did it, Professor," McAllister said, a rare, soft smile on his face. "You buried an empire under a mountain of paperwork." Finch chuckled, adjusting his suit. "Just showed them what we do best, Colonel. Order has its limits. Bureaucracy is infinite." The Concordance, having learned a profound lesson, began to reshape its understanding of warfare, of diplomacy, and of governance itself. They no longer saw humanity's complex administrative systems as quaint inefficiencies, but as a profound expression of a unique kind of intelligence, a capacity for pattern breaking that was, in its own way, a cosmic force. The bureaucrats became a permanent, celebrated branch of the Concordance military. Their motto, often inscribed on the back of a multi-part form, became a whispered legend across the stars. Never underestimate the power of proper procedure. Humanity had proven that order in its purest form could be a weakness, that the unpredictable, The illogical, the procedurally ambiguous, and the fundamentally human choices, the ones made from a desire for a loophole, a delay, an extra layer of oversight, or simply a new form, were the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They had broken the Ky'lar not with brute force, but with the elegant, chaotic equation of the human administrative spirit. And in doing so, they had saved the stars, ushering in an era where the cosmos finally learned to appreciate the beautiful, unpatterned echoes of pure human red tape.